I said we was gonna take it back. So the goddess of sex, war, and power is Inanna, also known as Ishtar. There were rituals that included whipping, sacred prostitution, and ecstatic trance. There were priests and priestesses that engaged in role reversal, symbolic death, and resurrection. It's one of the earliest recorded uses of kink coded ceremonial roleplay. So long before kink had a name, before the DSM, before dungeons, and before safe words, there were ritual spaces where power, sex, pain, and transformation lived together. One of the oldest we know comes from ancient Sumer, make sure I'm pronouncing it right, and this is over 5,000 years ago in what is now Iraq. Inanna, later known as Ishtar, was the Sumerian goddess of sex, war, justice, and power. She was not a passive deity, right? She was a force. And the worship of Nana wasn't just symbolic, it was embodied. Her temples, they were sites of sacred sexuality, ritual pain, and ceremonial role play. Rituals included whipping, intense music, and trance states. Sounds familiar. It included sacred prostitution, which wasn't taboo, but it was holy. The body was seen as a gateway to the divine, and erotic energy was understood as a source of power, not shame. Priests and priestesses of Inanna were not all cisgender or binary. Many were gender fluid, androgynous, or otherwise outside of what would now be considered normative. They enacted ceremonial scenes that included role reversal, submission to the goddess, symbolic death, and resurrection, all within structured ritual. These were not casual performances, these were initiations, transmissions, and for a lot of folks, transformations. You can see the echoes of these kink coded practices here, right? We can see it with consensual pain, dominance and submission, altered states, ritual attire, and spiritual eroticism. But in that context, none of it needed justification. It was considered sacred back then. Now, when we say kink has lineage, this is what we mean. Not that we are reenacting these rituals literally, right? Or maybe some folks might be, but that the threads of our practice are older than colonization, older than psychiatry, and then it's definitely older than shame, although shame began to take over and to overshadow. But we'll talk more about that. Inanna's worship reminds us there has always been people who use sex, power, pain, and embodiment to get free. And the body was never the enemy. On the contrary, for a lot of folks, it was the altar.